Hello everybody. So I look back at some of my old videos and I had one from a couple of months ago where I was looking ahead at the World Test Championship final. So I think I did this just after Australia qualified and South Africa qualified, so we knew who'd be in it. And at that point I was looking ahead at the Australian Tour to Sri Lanka, which was a 2-test series that had no bearing on the World Test Championship final because Australia had already qualified, Sri Lanka couldn't, and it wouldn't make any difference to who qualified. So I felt like this was an opportunity effectively for Australia to get used to having the right team ahead of the World Test Championship final, or WTC as a lot of people call it. And the thing is, they ignored what I said. And look, I'm not expecting Cricket Australia officials to be reading my little blogs. So there have been times in the past where I've been published in reasonably big magazines and stuff, and they do seem to have listened to what I've said. But what I posted was on YouTube. I think it had 18 views, so they're not really going to watch that. And so I wanted to go back on that, revise that, and look back at what I'd suggested and what might have happened if they'd listened to it. So the first thing to note is that Pat Cummins had decided to leave the tour. I believe his wife was having a child, or his mother was, I think his mother was sick, something along those lines. But then while he was away, they reported that he was injured, which was a bit of a strange thing. I don't believe that he was injured, but who knows. It's strange that when you're having time off, you get injured while you're having time off. But who knows? Anyway, he was out. And what this meant was that we didn't have to debate whether to keep our normal 3 pacers and 1 spinner, or to drop one of the pacers, and if so, which one. Because Pat Cummins was out. He's a pacer. And therefore we could have our second spinner, which we probably wanted in Sri Lanka, although it'd depend, because we don't necessarily want to have 2 spinners. And then the question was, do we have Matthew Kuhnemann or Todd Murphy, or do we even go in with 3 spinners? So it was the choice to go in with 3 spinners. Now, of course, my view was, these test matches don't matter. What we want to do is we want to have a stable team that's heading towards our best team for the World Test Championship final. So that was more important, because we didn't need to win that test series. Now, some people would say, well, that was the only test series that Australia didn't have as far as bilateral series. So we did want to try to win, but also at the same time it wasn't urgent to win. So obviously throughout the series against India, we started off with Nathan McSweeney in the 11, and he played. And that was a bit of a disaster. And for 3 tests we had Nathan McSweeney when we shouldn't have. It's not that he hasn't played okay in first class cricket, but it was more that he wasn't really test level, and he also wasn't an opener. Now I could see that he could start making the mix and all that, and within another year or 2 he could be at test level in theory if he kept improving. I could see that. But suddenly thrusting him in and then forcing him to open was always going to be very, very risky, particularly since we were actually missing an all-rounder, not an opening batsman. But anyway, we digressed with that. So we ended up with, I think by the 4th test we had the right team, and 5th test we definitely did. So heading to Sri Lanka, we should have kept the same team, minus Pat Cummins. And now I thought actually that Todd Murphy was the better bowler out of Murphy and Kuhnemann, but for balance they decided to go with Kuhnemann because he's a different kind of bowler to Nathan Lyon. They didn't want to have 2 spin bowlers of the same kind. I could see the merit in that, although I didn't completely agree. But I guess if you sort of think of it from the point of view of trying to build a team for the future, you want to give different players opportunities. Murphy had already proved himself in India, so there was no need for him to prove himself again. Kuhnemann hadn't proved himself, so you could see the benefit to playing him. And of course we had Josh Hazlewood was still injured. He hadn't played for the last 2 tests against India, so obviously Scott Boland was going to play. The rest of it should have been automatic. But for some reason, the selectors decided not to pick Sam Constas. Now, I maintain that Sam Constas was the best opener, or at least the second best after Usman Khawaja, who was already in the team. And there wasn't really any question about that. There was nobody else that was waiting in the wings, and we weren't sure which was better. Nathan McSweeney had already been tried and he failed. We couldn't go back to Cameron Bancroft or Marcus Harris because they both had appalling test records after long periods of time. And in their lead up, they hadn't really done anything warranting selection. And there was nobody else. There still isn't. Now, we can talk about Henry Hunt. I know he's doing fairly well in the first class arena and he opens. But again, he would still need another year or two, at least a few months, to build up to B test level. And I see his record. It's nowhere near as good as Sam Constas. It's nowhere near as good as some of the others. So the idea of playing Henry Hunt would be very risky. But what they did was they decided to open with Travis Head. Now, Travis Head does open in one-day cricket, and he has opened a couple of times in tests. He got good results, although if you look beyond the scorecard and look at the circumstances of them, they were still okay, but they weren't perhaps as impressive as the numbers suggest. They were easier batting conditions and easier situations. And the circumstances do matter. It's not that he was bad at opening, but perhaps not as good as the numbers suggest he was. And I know people say, oh, but a century, an average of 50 is an average of 50. Well, it's not. And we always criticise people. There are easy batting conditions and there are hard. And there are, it does change things. So, anyway. So he was forced to open and he agreed to. And because of that, they left Sam Constas out. And this is a guy, he's 19, he's played 2 tests, he did well in those 2 tests. And he's inexplicably dumped, not for a player returning from injury or something like that, which would be fair enough, but just because they wanted Travis Head to open, who didn't want to open. And that was a bit of a mess. Now we know what happened after that, and of course they ended up having Marnus Labuschagne in the final, and that was a disaster. But I wanted to imagine that they'd done what I wanted them to do. Just to leave Sam Constas in and keep the same 11. That would have meant Josh Inglis not playing, and that would have meant Cooper Connolly not playing. And I know Inglis got a century on debut and then he got a 0 because his back was hurt. Cooper Connolly did terribly. So we're imagining that those 2 players didn't have their debuts. So we wouldn't be thinking of Josh Inglis as an amazing player. We would head into the World Test Championship final knowing who our 11 was going to be. And the only choice would be, do we get rid of Marnus Labuschagne at the number 3 and perhaps replace him with Josh Inglis? Or even Cameron Green, who got a few centuries in first class cricket. And I think he got 6 centuries in county cricket. Do we count that, or do we decide not to? And that would have been a decision we would have made. The Labuschagne versus Cameron Green, and there would have been others. We would have considered Josh Inglis, probably would have considered Cooper Connolly too. He had a great first class record and done really well for Australia for ODIs and T20s. We would have considered those, all of them. Would have been that spot, and we probably would have even said, all right, whoever comes in is going to come in at number 6. So we're going to move everyone up. Or maybe you'd put them at 5, but I think realistically you would have put them at 6. Make it nice and easy. So whoever it was, whether it was Cameron Green, Josh Inglis, or Cooper Connolly, I think had he not made his debut and failed so badly, Cooper Connolly would have been in the mix for the World Test Championship final. We would have been considering them all and deciding which one would play, but they'd all be playing at 6. no matter who it was. And Sam Constance would have been playing. How well would Sam Constance have done in Sri Lanka? A lot of people say, oh, it definitely would have failed. All right. Would have mattered. Let's say he got 10 and 15. Let's say every match he got around 10 or 15. I'm still having him in the World Test Championship final. Now, I probably wouldn't if he got duck. You know, but Australia's still going to win both tests anyway. The Sri Lanka wasn't even trying. That would be tough though, if you'd got nothing but ducks, 4 ducks in a row over there, or maybe 3 if they didn't play every innings. It would have been a tough decision then. But even if you got 10 or 15 in every innings, I would still have had him in the World Test Championship final. I'm sorry, I would have. But the thing is, let's say that he got a 10, a 90 and a 15. Oh no, he's definitely playing. And the thing is, we'd then have a stable team. Now, even though you're saying, okay, there's one position we're not sure about, I think in the end, we would have been safe and given Labuschagne another test. And because of the disruption it would have caused and all that sort of stuff, Labuschagne would have played at number 3 and he would have had one more test. We would have then had the final decision, would have been, do we play Hazlewood or do we stay with Boland? And I think, and I know there was a lot of pressure to play Hazlewood because he has a better record. I think it probably would have been a better choice to have gone with Boland. So let's imagine that they'd done that. Let's imagine they'd done what I wanted them to do. And that means going into the World Test Championship final with, yes, there would have been discussion about dropping Labuschagne, but let's say they stuck with him. They gave him one more chance. He's batting at 3, and they've decided to leave Boland in there and not to risk Hazlewood, because Hazlewood hadn't returned for injury. Let's say they're not replacing Labuschagne. He's still there, and let's say not only is Constance there, but that he'd played in Sri Lanka. He's now a 4-test veteran. Well, not really veteran, but he's played 4 tests. He's coming in there. Let's say one of them, he did well, 1 innings. He got 90 or something. The others were a bit of failures. He's got 2 50s, 2 half centuries out of his 4 tests. Probably averages 35 or so. And he's not great, but he's okay. We got him there. South Africa's going to say, all right, well, we're going to target Constance and Labuschagne. Well, they're probably still going to say they're going to target the top 3. Well, we said, no, oh yeah, but Khawaja was International Player of the Year in 2023, I think it was. Labuschagne was world's number 1 ranked batsman. It was around 2019, 2020. And then you've got Sam Constance just destroyed the best bowler in the world at the moment, Jasprit Bumrah. We've got some confidence there. So what would the result be that would have been different? So let's assume everything else is the same. South Africa win the toss, Australia sent into bat. What would their scores have been? Would they have been just as bad? Would Constance have done as badly as Cameron Green did? So Cameron Green got 4-0. The 4 that he got was an edge. It could have been caught in the slips, went through the slips for 4. Now, it wasn't close to being caught, but it was a bit lucky. Could have easily bowled him, could have easily been caught in the slips and got a 4. And then he was out on the 3rd ball, I believe. Second innings, he got out for a duck. He didn't bowl, didn't contribute anything else really. Would Constance have done as badly if Constance was opening? It's always possible he would have done as bad, but he certainly wouldn't have done worse. And I think most likely, on average, he would have got around 20. Now, he might have got more. You never know, he's early in his career. We saw how Aiden Markram did. Aiden Markram, I think, is not that good a player, but he will occasionally become good. Aiden Markram got 136 in the 4th innings and won the match. Now, I think there's a chance that Constance could have done something similar to that. There's also a chance he would have just got his 15 or 20. And because I think that's the sort of level that he's at the moment. Same sort of level as Aiden Markram. Not worse, but about the same. So let's assume that he didn't get that magical innings. He got about 15 or 20. Alright, well, let's say 20 each innings. And then we say, Usman Khawaja batting with him. Now we saw against India that Usman Khawaja failed when he had Nathan McSweeney at the other end. But as soon as he had a better opener with him, someone that knew what he was doing, he did a lot better. So as soon as, he batted really well with Sam Constant. So we know that Khawaja got 0 and 1. It's possible he would have got 0 and 1 again, but I think more likely he would have got, let's say, 20 each innings. I'm not going to assume some huge score. I'm going to say about 15 or 20. Let's say he's got 20 in each innings. So they're both getting 20 in each innings, and that's replacing 0 and 1 and 4 and 0. So instead of 5 runs between the two openers, we're getting 80. So that's a 75 run difference. Again, remember, South Africa won with 5 wickets in hand. They're chasing 281, I think it was, to win, or 282. So we're adding 75 to it. That means that when they hit the winning runs, they actually still had 75 runs to get. 5 wickets in hand. They've still got 2 proper batsmen at the crease, and they've still got Marco Jansen to come, and even Keshav Maharaj can get a few runs sometimes. In fact, even Rabada can sometimes. The only real buddy is Lungi Nagini at number 11. So another 75 runs doesn't mean it's out of the question. Now I've still got Marnus Labuschagne in the team. Now of course he got around 20 in each innings anyway, opening the batting. Now on form, he's averaging about 28, but they were difficult batting conditions. So I think about what he got is about probably what he would have got batting 3. So I'm not seeing really any difference in his score. Again, we're going to have everyone else get the same sort of score. Smith's going to get the same, everyone else is going to get about the same. And the bowling, we're assuming everything's exactly the same, except for the players we've changed. And I'm changing also Khawaja because he's got a batting partner. So 75 runs difference, no other differences. But then we have Scott Boland. Now Scott Boland, in the World Test Championship final 2 years ago, took 5 wickets. It was 5 wickets for about 80 runs in the match, so it was 2 and 3. And Josh Hazlewood in the match got 1 and 1, so he got 2 wickets for the match, 1 wicket in each innings. So if we assume there's 3 more wickets for Scott Boland, does that make a difference? And I'd say it probably does. Would Boland have got the same sort of result this time against South Africa as he got against India 2 years ago? Well, yeah. I think actually Boland was in better form now than he was 2 years ago. So I'm going to give him those 5 wickets. So that means all the rest of the bowling's the same, but Boland's doing better than Hazlewood. 2 years later, 3 more wickets. So that means that South Africa are still chasing 75 runs to get with 5 wickets in hand. But instead of all the bowlers being tapped out, we've actually got Scott Boland still with 3 wickets in him. So, a lot of people were saying, the Australian bowling was tired towards the end, they'd given up. There were a few little sparks, but not a lot. Now, Boland is a guy that can bowl forever. That's one of his strengths. He doesn't need to have somebody to relieve him. And so, you then have who was it, Verane, the wicketkeeper, and Beddington, who's not a very experienced batsman. And they'd be there, they'd only just come to the crease. 75 runs to get, we're saying. Alright, 75 runs to get. But Boland's fresh. He hasn't taken any wickets this innings. He got 2 wickets in the first innings. He's a 4th innings specialist. He's going to come down with fire. And he's expecting his 3 wickets. All the other bowlers are giving up. They're too tired, they're lacking penetration. Boland's coming in fresh. He's come in, Captain Pat Cummins says, Scotty, can you do something special? And he comes in and he does something special. And he would get rid of one of them. Let's say he's got rid of Beddington, a bit of an inexperienced player. Brings in number 8, Marco Jansen, who can still bat pretty well. And they're going, well, we've got to get 75 runs to get. Let's say they've got another team. They need 65 to get. And you've got Marco Jansen in there. And he's saying, well, still got 4 wickets in hand. We've got to get 65. We can do this. And he does this, and he does pretty well, and they get up to about 30 runs to get. Boland gets rid of Verane. Now we're left with Marco Jansen only 35 runs to get 3 wickets in hand. And Boland's still got 1 more wicket in him. In comes Keshav Maharaj. Still bat reasonably well. They go, no, we can still do this. 3 wickets, 35 runs, we can manage this. We can do this, South Africa's telling themselves. Now Maharaj can maybe get a 6, maybe get a 4. 15 runs to get, he's out. And that's the last of Boland's wickets, because we're giving him 5. There he's extra 3. Now we're left 15 runs to get. Kagiso Rabada comes in. And he's still got Marco Jansen at the other end. They've got 15 runs to get, 2 wickets in hand. They can do that. Rabada hoiks 1, goes to 4, and then he's bowled around his legs. They've got 9 to get now. Jansen has got to do everything. Langi Ngidi tries to get him, you can't manage it. Can't get the ball away, he's nearly stumped, he's nearly LBWs, nearly everything. There's no more reviews. And then it's all down to Jansen. He's got 6 balls to get 9 runs. And if he doesn't get them, he at least needs to farm the strike. It's all going against him. He tries, he can't manage it. Ngidi has to face the strike. I think Australia's going to win. Nope, Ngidi gets 1. It's an leg by, he runs, he's almost run out. There's memories of 1999 World Cup semi-final, but he's not run out. They don't repeat themselves. 8 runs to win now. Jansen's on strike. He towers, hits a big 6 off a tiring Mitchell Starc, who's come in to try to prize out the last wicket. Australia's shoulder slump, 2 to get. There's a lot of pressure. A dot ball, nearly bowled around his legs. Nearly a wide, is it going to be called? It's not called. Nearly a no ball, should have been called but wasn't. And then the final ball, hoiks 1, almost goes for 6, it doesn't matter, it's a 4, and South Africa have won by 1 wicket. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Australia win. But I think with and it was a good pitch by the 3rd day, the sun had come out. That's why South Africa sent Australia in, because they knew that it would get easy to bat on later on. It's a bit of a gamble, but it paid off. And I still see South Africa winning, maybe. But you can see that's a 1-wicket win. And we finish that test and we say, well, we did everything we could. Put all our cards on the table. We shake hands, we know we did our best. I mean, 5-wicket win, it was still fairly close. And it's not about winning or losing. It's about putting your best team on the park. Just because you lose doesn't mean it was the wrong team. Just because you win doesn't mean it was the right team. But we'd go there and we'd be really excited. We'd be one of the best tests, worthy of a World Test Championship final. South Africa win, they're ecstatic. They'd be a lot happier than they were in real life against an Australian team that they knew was weakened. They knew that the selectors had picked the wrong side. And Scott Boland would be very disappointed, but we'd go with him. We'd say, well, tell you what, Boland, you're probably better than Hazlewood. We're going to stick with you for a while. And they go over to the West Indies, and Boland is our incumbent. He's the one that could maybe get us home. Hazlewood's on the outer. We wouldn't have picked Green. We're saying to Green, look, mate, you've got a few centuries. Maybe we consider putting him in West Indies as purely a batsman. He wouldn't have played in the World Test Championship final. Maybe Labuschagne is the casualty of the final. Maybe he leaves and then we have Green come in. Does Inglis play? Well, Steve Smith's out injured, so Inglis will come back in. He's coming in, he's about to make his Test debut because, of course, in this scenario, he hasn't played in Sri Lanka. And we probably also have Cooper Connolly there on standby. In fact, maybe even before the Test series, they're deciding between Labuschagne and Inglis for the final spot. But maybe by that stage, I think they've probably dropped him. And you see, the thing is, it's not about whether we won or lost. It's about whether we put the right team on the field. Now, with that right team, we might have lost even worse, although I can't imagine it being any worse considering the players I was suggesting not to be in the team did so appalling. And I suppose it's possible that Labuschagne at 3 would have done worse than Labuschagne opening, but even then it wouldn't really have made much difference. He only contributed to 17 and 18, so if he got 0 and 0, so instead of losing by 5 wickets, we're losing by 6 or 7. It wouldn't have made a big difference. So that's the problem. I think I was quite obviously right. And I'm not just right because the 3 people I said shouldn't have played, or should have been in different positions with Labuschagne, should have, did really badly. That's not the issue. I was right because it was a balance issue. And when you're forcing someone like Labuschagne to open when they don't want to, when you have an opener who wants to open, and you had Head in Sri Lanka who didn't want to open either. You have Smith that did want to open, but they're not letting him. And the only other one that they should have considered was Josh Inglis, who was happy to open. So if they were going to replace Constas, they should have put Inglis in, not Labuschagne. And it's really important because you can't just put somebody in to open when they don't want to open. And he made it clear when David Warner retired that he did not want to open. So you can't just do that. You can't expect him to do well. Now, I would have said, well, if Cameron Green's going to come in and he's injured, he's going to have to open. But he was not interested either. So we couldn't have had Green opening. Inglis we could have. But no one was really talking about that. And there is the issue because we're expecting people to open who don't want to open. Now I know we've had non-openers do well for Australia in the past. David Boone. What was that guy? Justin Langer. And even Shane Watson did reasonably well. But they were more people that kind of were asked, do you want to open this the only way you're playing? And they said yes. And that's okay, that's different. And Justin Langer after that started opening first class level after he made his test debut. David Boone kept trying to pressure to go back to a number 3 and eventually went back to number 3. While Shane Watson, of course, he wanted to bat in the middle order, but then he ended up opening in T20s and ODIs and all that sort of thing. So I think that the opener position is a bit of a specialist position. I mean, you have, for example, Ricky Ponting, who batted at 3 for his whole career, or most of his career. He started at 6 and then he was 4 and 5 and all that. But after he settled, he became a number 3. He never opened. Didn't open even one match in any form. So if it was such a non-specialist position, you would have thought you would have had Ricky Ponting open. No, Sachin Tendulkar opened in ODIs and T20s, and so did Brian Lara. And they were both number 3s or number 4s. So you do have that. But again, that was for the shorter formats. It's a little bit different. So I think that what we should learn is, and it's not that Sam Constas is the best player in the world. That's not the issue. I don't know, he may well end up failing. Some people say he's got great temperament, great future. Others say he's terrible. You've also got to realise that it's not just that position had no other replacement. But Usman Khawaja is probably maximum 2 years away from retirement. So we not only need to blood someone like Constas, we also need to blood a second one. Who's the second one going to be? I mean, Henry Hunt's done okay at first class level. But I think temperament-wise, I actually prefer Jake Fraser McGurk. Now people are saying, why the hell, he averages like 15. Yeah. If you look at David Warner early in his first class career, he was doing pretty awfully too. He was a T20 specialist. I think you can convert that. And I think he has that exposure from the IPL, and doing really well that one season, that he knows what it takes to succeed. And I think this is why I can say, all right, Jake Fraser McGurk can succeed at the top level. Now, he's at the moment, you wouldn't put him in the test team, not even close. But I'd be thinking, all right, this is a player we can get someone to work with, and he may be able to do really well in test. And he might not. but I would be at least looking at him. Now, some people have said Mitchell Owen, I'm not as convinced about him, but there's probably others. I mean, I'd be looking at Henry Hunt for sure, and I'd be looking at Jake Fraser-McGurk. Is there anyone else I'd look at? Not at the moment. Would I look at Nathan McSweeney? Not to open. Maybe as a number 4. I think he's already proven he can't open. But, if he completely changes everything about his own game and everything and commits to being an opener, maybe McSweeney could be considered as an opener. But at the moment, he's not considering that. He's happy to be a number 4. He's not opening in any form of cricket. Not domestic one day international, not domestic T20, not domestic first class. And I'd really want him to be opening in all 3 of them before I'd even look at him as an opener for Test. Because I think he's already pretty much said he doesn't want opening Test. And the other one I would say is Josh Inglis has shown a degree of commitment to be a Test opener. Now, the issue is that Alex Carey's still wicket-keeping really well. Do you have Josh Inglis? So, for me, the ones that I'm excited about, I'd be saying, all right, Fraser-McGurk, I want you to really try to be a Test opener. Do you want to be? If he says yes, work on it. We're going to get you the batting coach. We know you've got the temperament. We're going to get you the batting coach to bat at Test level the same way you would in T20s. And see if you can do it. If you can, good, we'll consider you. If you can't, then, well, too bad for you. And then I'd say, all right, Henry Hunt, you've done all right, first class level. Let's give you a chance and see if you can step up. Going to put you in some A teams and so forth. And then I'm going to say, all right, Josh Inglis, you did well as a number 4 on your Test debut. All right, Sri Lanka were not doing very, very well, and you came in at 4 for 500 or something ridiculous. I think it was 4 for 350 or something like that. And was it 3 for 450? It was a pretty ridiculously easy condition, we'll just say. But he still got a century. And it was a Test century, and then he got a duck in the second innings. But that was due to backstep basing. So, I'd say to Josh Inglis, are you interested in giving up on wicket keeping, essentially, to become a Test opener? And if Inglis says, no, I want to be a wicket keeper, so you'd still be negotiating it. And for me, they're probably the 3 biggest options. But I'd want to hope that Sam Constas can be there with them, whichever one ends up being his partner. And I suppose if you had to do it right now, you had to do it today, the partner would be Josh Inglis. But I'd hope that Khawaja can keep going and keep being decent for another year or 2. Because you wouldn't want to have 2 brand new ones at once. That'd be quite worrying. In which case I would have Josh Inglis because he's at least got some experience at Tests or One Day International and T20 level. So, yeah. It's an interesting conundrum, but I certainly would not be thinking of Nathan McSweeney, and I definitely wouldn't be giving up on Sam Constas quite yet. I've seen on YouTube that some of Cricket Australia have tried to promote Sam Constas again after they've been so cruel to him. And I think that's a bit of a mixed message, but hopefully it works out all right. I remember back in the 90s there was a guy called Matthew Elliott who was quite a good opener, and he got a couple of tests. I think he averaged like 55 first class level, something like that. Got a couple of tests and failed, and then it was pretty much just ignored after that. They said, well, he can't step up to Test level. Of course, that was during a stage when a lot of people had good averages. They also disregarded Matthew Hayden. He had to step up and he did well. And I wondered about Matthew Elliott, and I think that perhaps he could have been a bit better if they'd sort of tried a bit harder with him. A lot of people said at the time it was a bit of a state envy because they went with Matthew Slater instead. And I don't know that Slater was as good as Elliott. So, there's always these what ifs and all that sort of thing. But at the moment, the cupboard's pretty bare for openers. We have a lot of players that can open at T20 level and then smash it all around. And look, you never know, maybe Mitchell Owen even could step up. But yeah, I guess the reason I think of Jake Fraser-McGurk ahead of Mitchell Owen is Jake Fraser-McGurk, or JFM as some people call him, JFMG even. He did well in India. And that's a lot harder than doing well in Australia, where you have your own coaches and people that know you really well. You're in India, you have foreign coaches. And so you have to do that by yourself. And so that's why the temperament bit is a lot higher for him than it is for example, Mitchell Owen. That's not to say that Mitchell Owen is out of the picture so much as right now I'm putting JFM, or JFMG, ahead of him. But yeah, so at the moment, obviously Usman Khawaja is our number one opener. I think Sam Constant is our number two. And at the moment, I'd put Josh Inglis as our number three. Again, I'm not considering Travis Head because he doesn't want to open. And I'm not considering Steve Smith because he doesn't want to open. And I'm really not considering Marnus Labuschagne because he really doesn't want to open. And I'm not considering Nathan McSweeney because he doesn't want to open. So at the moment, Josh Inglis is our number three. After that, I guess it'd be Henry Hunt, although I think he has a way to go. And then probably JFM or JFMG. But I think he needs a bit more work to go. It is a pity that we had that guy, what was his name? The one that had concussions all the time. Will Bukowski, and he unfortunately had to retire due to lots of concussions. And that was a pity because he was our next opener to come. And if he'd been playing, it would have been a lot easier to work out what we're doing with everything. He would have been in the side, we would have had Sam Constant knocking on the door, but perhaps being the third option to replace Usman Khawaja. It makes a difference, Will Bukowski not being there. Anyway, look, it's a bit, I've gone over a lot of topics there, but yeah, suffice to say that I think that we did mess up for the World Test Championship final. I'm not as upset about our squad for West Indies, but I still, I can see the merit in playing Cameron Green, even though he's not bowling at me, but I wouldn't have had him. I would have given Labuschagne another test series, but I can see the benefit in dropping him. But yeah. Anyway, that's it for me. Bye bye now.